Writing a book is not about being a hobbyist. For many, it's a business, a serious business. And to do that, you need to have a business mind. You need to work on your business and not in your business. So to chat to us today, I have William Buist from this book, Intentional Mastery, Build a Better Business. William, thank you for being on the show.
Hello, Kim, and thank you very much for having me. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
What I liked about this book is it's about being intentional. Sometimes people think, well, I'll just start a business because it's my passion, or I'll just write a book. But at the end of the day, if you want it to be successful, you need to have a strategy. You need to think things through. So what made you decide to write this book?
Oh, what a great question. It's really the culmination of working all my life in teams within big corporates, and then working with small business owners, helping them to grow and build a successful business, and watching and listening to what they were doing and what the successful people were doing that the less successful people weren't. And I realized that there was mastery capability in all of us, but a lot of people don't really exploit their own skills and drive intentionally to become the very best they can be at what they do. And through watching that and researching the way that people work, I've developed the ideas that are in the book to help business owners to think, how do I move who I am to be the best business person I can be, to bring the best value to my clients, and to make all of that a lot of fun as well as we go, and have a lot of joy in doing what they do.
It's interesting that you say fun, because I find that when we make mistakes, it kind of sucks the joy out of it. We get a lot of people who criticize us. But what's your take on making mistakes in business?
I think we're all going to make mistakes. Part of the journey of mastery that I talk about in the book is a stage that I call novice, when we have got a little bit of knowledge, a little bit of skill, but things keep going wrong. And it can be very frustrating, you're right. It can suck the energy out of what you're doing. But unless you make those mistakes, we don't learn what the right way to do things really is. And we can't build the skill that we need to be able to do things effectively and well every time.
And what I find is that a lot of people don't reach out and ask for help when they're struggling.
It's true, they don't. And we can ask for help and find that we're asking the wrong people, and I think that's one of the reasons that we don't. We ask, sometimes just ask anybody we run across, I've got this issue, can you help me? And we get bad advice because we're asking people who are not experts in that area, not masters of their art. So one of the things that I think is about the intentionality is about surrounding yourself with people who can lift you up, who can give you the right answers, and whose experience we can draw on to help avoid making the big mistakes and learn from them, so that we develop faster and more effectively as a result.
I like that, because when I started writing, I wrote medieval fantasy, and one of the things that you realize is that kings and queens, they had people advisors. You can't be something to all people, but now we're finding that you're expecting to be, know everything, but no, you have to find the right person and say, this is an area I need help in, can you help me?
Yeah, and I think being open and listening to what people say, recognizing that not all feedback is going to drive you in the right direction. So we need those advisors for sure. But I'm always minded that in medieval times, the courts usually had a jester, and the purpose of the jester was not just to make jokes, but actually, because they were a jester, they could highlight something that others would be scared to highlight. They would highlight your own foolishness, your own blind spots, with humour, that enabled you to see those moments when we go, yeah, I didn't do that very well, did I? But we need those moments too. And so I think whilst anybody can give us feedback, we should take feedback from those people who are experienced enough to give it in the way that we can hear it.
And I think learning from people who have mastered that particular area. I know that when I started writing myself and I wanted to get onto Amazon, I spoke to a gentleman who I have enormous respect for, but he only sold his books at events in person. And then it was very difficult because it's someone that I really respected, and I had to say to him, no, I take my advice in this particular area from people who have had mastery in that area, and then when I need to have advice in this area, I'll get it from you. And that's a very difficult conversation because he took it graciously, but some people don't take it graciously if you don't take their advice.
Well, I think that's true. They may not. One of the ways I think we can avoid creating that sort of uncertainty or unhappiness around the way that we're asking for feedback is to, first of all, be curious. Be curious about the person who's offering you some help, what their expertise is, what experience they have. Ask them questions about when have they done this and what happened for them. Because I think sometimes we have to think about the context of the other person's experience and see what insights. We talked about this earlier before we started the podcast. We talked about how insights are so important, insights from other areas of your life. You've written books, you will have insights from the process of writing that will be really important for somebody in a business who's doing something, not writing a book, but maybe writing a blog post or writing an email to a potential client, that just a subtle change in the order of the words in a sentence or changing the emphasis of the sentence can make a massive difference to the power of the communication. So your experience in writing a book, I'm a photographer, my experience of looking at landscapes and thinking about how to communicate what I'm seeing to somebody who might look at that photograph in years to come. Those insights also apply to business. How do we leave a snapshot of what we do in business with our clients so that in years to come they remember the value they had from us and can refer us on to other people. So that kind of strategic view of how do we get insights from what I'm doing today that I can use for the rest of my business life. And I'm always minded that every decision that somebody's taken in their business up until now was taken by somebody less experienced than they are today. And so you would almost certainly make better decisions today about things you took decisions on 5 years ago and 10 years ago, but you learned from those decisions. That's why you can make a better decision today.
That's so true. Just coming over here to the UK, and for those of my regular viewers, we're not in the normal space. I'm sitting here in UK. We're at Castle Combe, which is absolutely exquisite. But the last time I came to the UK, I had an epileptic seizure in the subways in London. It was my very, very first time traveling. Yeah. And so my trigger reaction was that, I'm traveling again. Is the same thing going to happen to me? And at that point, my husband said, why? You were 21 years old. You had never traveled abroad beforehand, and you travel completely alone. And this time you're traveling with a companion. You know how to read your body. This is going to happen. And so he unpacked it for me and said, you don't have to be fearful because you've learned from all of those things. And it's the same in business.
It is, very much so. And I think, I've made enough mistakes to write a book. And I think, we will all make mistakes in business, take on clients that in hindsight we look back and think, actually, that wasn't a very good client. But we learn from that and we start recognizing, well, who are the very good clients? Who are the people where what I do as a business mentor really resonates, really gives value? And who are the people for whom the way that I work and the knowledge that I have might add some value, but not as much. And then I can hone how I do the marketing, how I do the sales, how I work with the clients that I have so that I give the best possible value. And I know that next year, because I'm being intentional about improving that, I'll be adding even more value. And the year after that, even more. And that to me is really important. And I think, one of the reasons I wrote the book is because I think quite often, people they nearly always want to improve, but don't always know how to. They don't know where to focus to get the best possible improvement. And by focusing, I think, on ourselves, on our own expertise, our knowledge, our skills, our experience that we've got so far, and then thinking about what can I do to take that up another level, and what insights do I need to do that? That intentionality is what will drive better business tomorrow from the business we're doing today.
One of the things I often ask people when I start working with them is, who is your ideal reader? What problem are you going to be solving in the book? And so I'm going to ask you the same question. If I'm sitting over here and I'm thinking to myself, intentional mastery, what does that mean to me? And what problem am I going to solve in my life by reading this book? What would you say?
So first of all, you're right, this book is not for every business. I know very little about consumer business, so B2C business as we call it in the UK, business to consumer. But I've worked a lot with businesses that provide services to other businesses. So generally the book is for people who use their knowledge and their skill and their experience to add value to other businesses than their own. And that it's that value that their clients are buying from them. And it's a relatively small group of people who are in, as I say, services. So it tends to be people who are training or working as a consultant or a project manager with their clients, who know they want to be the very best they can be, and also know that they're not there yet. They are experts. They're probably already recognised as experts in their field, but they themselves have a little bit of a niggle of dissatisfaction and want to just, what can I do next? How do I drive this forward? How do I make it better? And those are the people I want to work with. Hungry to improve, but already expert.
Because I find that when you settle, when you're like, okay, well, my clients are happy, I'm happy. When you're settling, then you're never going to achieve that level. You're never going to be the person that everyone says, oh, I have to introduce you to William, or I have to introduce you to Kim. So for me, reading this book is about saying, I'm curious, I'm going to constantly be learning and elevate myself to that grandmaster status.
And I think that's one of the things, is to keep asking questions, keep asking about yourself, about your clients, but keep listening too. Don't just ask the questions, listen to the answers and listen really carefully. There's a lot in language and the words that people choose to use about you and about the way you provide your service, that if you're really listening, and you'll know you're really listening because they'll prompt other questions.
Yes.
I always say, people have said to me in the past, how do you tell when somebody's really listening? And my simple answer to that is because they ask me questions about what I've just said. They want to know more, they want to go deeper. So keep asking the questions of your clients and your colleagues, your friends, people that know you well, about what's really working well, what isn't working well. And another very quick thing, often people talk about strengths and weaknesses. And when they do that, quite often they want to know about the weaknesses because they want to focus on improving the weaknesses. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. But that means you're not being intentional about the things you're already good at. How about making those even stronger and being curious about how to make what are already your strengths your superpowers? And that's mastery.
That reminds me of a little story that I read many years ago about a king or a leader, and his son was struggling with certain kinds of elements in his schooling. And he was supposed to take over this empire that his father had. So he kept on saying, these results are not good enough, these results are not good enough, these results are not good enough. And his son was incredibly unhappy. And then for a time he kind of wrote it off, and the regions started flourishing. And what happened? And so he said, well, what I did is, the region came to the father and said, what we did is we covered the areas that he was weak at, and he covered the areas that we were weak at, and that is why the region improved. So knowing what your strength is and focusing on that, that is really an element of mastery as well.
It is. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
William, thank you so much for being on the show. Tell us, if people wanted to reach out to you, how would they do that?
I'm very fortunate that I have an unusual name. So Buist, B-U-I-S-T. If you search for that, you'll probably find me fairly quickly. But I'm on LinkedIn, you'll find me on Google, and williambuist.com is the website, so find me there too. And I'd love to hear and speak to any of you that'd like to reach out and get in touch. We're very welcome to have a conversation and see how I can help expose and encourage you to intentionally master your own strengths.
And the book, where can we find the book?
You'll find the book Intentional Mastery. You'll find it on Amazon. Very easy to get it there. Any good bookshop will be able to order it as well. So it's certainly in the UK you'd be able to order it through any bookshop, but Amazon if you're outside the UK.
And it's available on Audible.
Indeed it is. On Audible, on Kindle, and in print. So any way that you choose to consume books, it's there for you.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for coming on to the show and for everyone staying tuned. And so pay attention to when our next show is going to be on, because we will have another UK-based author. Thank you for having us in your beautiful country and for choosing to be on the show. Kim,
it's been a delight. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm glad that the weather has been typical British autumn weather, with the leaves falling from the trees and the sun out in between the odd shower. It's fabulous.